Joker Folie Deux is an art-filled piece that has divided its audience feedback. The film utilizes metaphors, musicals, romance, and mental health as its core themes and inspirations to tell the story. This film comes to us 5 years after the first film blew fans out of the water. Folie Deux, however, only takes some of the style and storytelling aspects from its first film and tries to give audiences a fresh take on that film and the Joker character. It is very direct in saying that it is not your Joker that fights Batman and the one you've grown to love over the years. This is the tragedy of Arthur Fleck. In this video, we will be taking a look at where this film went wrong and what it does right. We'll also dive into some of the metaphors and deeper meanings of the film. Hello and welcome to Studio Cinema Saturday, the show where we review films old and new, the ones you don't like and the ones you do. I'm your host, Kael, and today I'm here talking Joker, Folie Deux. This film was directed by Todd Phiilips and it stars Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, Brendan Gleeson as Jackie Sullivan, Catherine Keener as Marianne Stewart, and Harry Lottie as Harvey Dent. To do a little spoiler-free section right here, for reference, I loved the first movie 5 years ago. I just did a video on it called Joker 5 Years Later where I reflected on just the masterpiece that it was 5 years ago. And while I really loved that film, I do still like this film. I didn't think it scratched the greatness of that first film, but I enjoyed it. I did find bits of it to be underwhelming and maybe a little lackluster. It's a very contained Joker story. You know, on my first watch, I found it extremely underwhelming, and coming out of a second watch and a little bit more insight and taking a little bit of a deeper look, I do like the film more than I initially did. I have to start by saying that Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix give top-notch performances. Their performances are worth the price of admission alone. Todd Phiilips even brings great direction and a ton of different direction to this film, while also encapsulating feelings from the first one. I don't say that this is a bad movie because of Todd Phiilips either. You know, all of my complaints here are just slight story complaints. I'll say though, the biggest joke in Joker Folie Deux is from the critics. IMDb gave this a 5.4. And while, you know, they gave the first one an 8.4, and it's not that, giving it a 5.4 is an absolute joke. And it's not taking a look at the artistry that's here. And we're going to take a look at that artistry, and we're going to take a look at what me and other fans and critics really don't like about this film. I'm gonna go ahead and break into spoilers, but before I go into spoilers, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to Studio 24. We have Horror Month going, where besides just taking a look at the two Joker films, we are looking at horror films and making horror films all month long, so be sure to check that out. Right off the bat, we have an animation that stars Joker and Me and My Shadow, and we see Arthur and Joker fighting over this persona that they've created together. You know, I think this is just a visual metaphor of what's going on throughout Arthur's head throughout the film. But now that we're into the spoilers, I can say by the end of Joker 2, Arthur isn't Joker anymore, almost acting as if he's not that other person. This decision to me was fine. I just wish we could have seen him act as the Joker more throughout the film. We really only get to see him play the Joker in his head, and I would have loved to see a scene where we think we're seeing the Joker in his head again, but we're revealed that this is actually real and he's actually performing acts as the Joker. Just to see Joaquin get the full-on Joker would have been super rewarding to audiences and fans who have just been waiting to see it. And the fact that we really didn't get that, besides moments in his head, is really unsatisfying. And the fact that, you know, after Joker 2, this is it, leaves you with a little bit of a hole. And truly, you know, one of my biggest complaints about the film is that Arthur doesn't do anything throughout the film. He just kind of simply walks through the plot and accepts what characters are throwing at him. The only big decisions he makes are firing his lawyer and telling the truth at the end. Before we go too much into like some of the other just plot points, I want to talk about Harley Quinn, or Lee. And you know, this decision I really don't care about. We can call her Lee. I loved her character. I loved the performance. She was deceptive, manipulative, and just plain crazy. The scene where she burns down the hospital screening and escapes singing, grabbing Arthur, running, dancing. This was probably my second favorite scene in the film. Thought this was such a great Harley Quinn moment, and like had potential to lead up to a great Harley and Quinn Joker moment that we never get. The same complaint that I had with Arthur's character and the fact that we just never get to see her full on Harley Quinn. We never get to see them, Joker and Harley. Again, other than in Joker's fantasies or in Arthur's fantasies. However, I thought it was a great decision to make her this character you couldn't trust, with her lying about her background, maybe even lying about the pregnancy. But when you go deeper into her arc, she's just a girl who fell in love with a serial killer. She thought she loved the Joker, but when Arthur revealed that it wasn't really who he was, she realized she loved the idea of the Joker. This leads us to the ending where she just walks away from Arthur. And to me, this is super unsatisfying, and it's an unsatisfying end to her character's story. I find it weird that in a film where even your main character gets what he deserves,
Folie, get what you deserve!
Lee is able to walk away scotch-free after all of the lying, manipulating, stealing, and damage she caused throughout the film. And like I said, I thought the performance was great. I thought the portrayal of the character of Harley Quinn was great. Loved what they did with tying in her background and school and everything, but I feel like Lee's story just didn't top out its max potential. Now that we've kind of just talked about the general characters of Joker and Harley and kind of broken down them just a little bit, let's get into the metaphoric, musical, comedic tragedy that is the life of Arthur Fleck and the Joker. In the first film, Arthur was becoming the Joker, and the Joker was dreaming of Arthur Fleck's dream life as a comedian and with Sophie. But in this film, Arthur dreams of Joker's dream life as a star entertainer with Harley Quinn, even dreaming of marrying her. But the biggest Joker dream he has is when he sings "There's Always a Joker" and begins to kill in the courtroom. This was my absolute favorite scene in the entire film, and just to see Joaquin look and feel like this classic Joker and just cause mayhem felt awesome. Like I've been saying, I truly think he needed one moment like this that wasn't just in his head. But ultimately, I thought switching this aspect from the first film into this film, where the story kind of flips, it leans into where this story is going. And admittedly, I loved that. I think it ultimately kind of highlights that intro with me and my shadow and shows the battle going on through Arthur's head, especially when he sings "There's Always a Joker" and the Joker is me, and then turns around to say that that's not really who he is and that he's not the Joker, and he lets down the crowd of people chanting his name, and he lets down Lee, who leaves the courtroom in this moment. And to dive into the mental health aspect of this film, I think we can look back to the beginning and see that the medicine they were giving him were nearly sedating him, and they had him in this mindless state. He doesn't talk in the film until he asks for a cigarette. And this did build tension, but it's also a display of he is a shell of himself. And it highlights, maybe like a sign of the times that they didn't know how to treat this kind of stuff. And you can kind of pick this up when the guards are noticing that he doesn't even like to tell them jokes anymore. While the first film poses, is mental health the reason he became the Joker, the sequel goes to spend an hour in the courtroom asking the same exact question. One side argues that mental health issues plague Arthur due to his childhood and life trauma, this trauma being so terrible that Arthur is making up fantasy reality worlds in his head. Through this, you see the tragedy of Arthur's life. Simply a kid who never got to see the light of the world. Lack of early development and lack of general help leads Arthur to attempt to stand up for himself and even defend himself at times. But the sad thing for Arthur is that we can see everyone who attaches themselves to him ends up leaving, or he can't end up trusting them, and he eventually finds that out about Lee as well. And you see that Arthur's life ends just as it kind of was the entire time. Alone. I think it kind of speaks to what they're saying about society and mental health and people not being able to find help. I think that was a theme of the first movie, but we see that that theme kind of continues throughout this movie, and Arthur's never able to find any help. But you're left to ask yourself the moral question is, did he deserve help? But here's what I believe proves he was a man plagued by mental health issues. We see in the end, he didn't like being the Joker. He liked the attention the Joker received. Arthur realizes the Joker is not the life he wants. Obviously, the bomb explodes, and who tries to save Arthur? A man dressed as the Joker. In a metaphoric kind of way, I think Todd Phiilips is trying to show us that the Joker tried to save Arthur, and Arthur didn't want to be saved by the Joker. And after seeing the events that happen after he chooses not to let the Joker see him, we see that Joker could have saved his life. He could have escaped with the Joker gang, he could have escaped with Harley, or become the Joker back in Arkham Asylum. But Arthur dies as himself, not the Joker, showing that this is still just truly a tragedy. Something I kind of skipped over was the musical aspect of this film, and it is a musical. I did talk about some of the fantasies, but Arthur is singing and dancing throughout most of this film in his head, sometimes not in his head. And Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn brings a fresh aspect to that as well. But I'll say, I see that this is dividing a lot of the reception of the film, but I loved this aspect. I think they're both great performers, and they're both great singers, and the dancing is beautiful in the film. And I can see that maybe if you're not into musicals, that this probably took you by surprise and, probably wasn't your favorite. But I thought the music aspect well represented the psychology of the characters and helped them move through their ups and downs. And using the music as motivation was absolutely great. I think a lot of people do this in their normal everyday lives. And singing and dancing is nothing new to the Joker for those who are kind of wondering where this came from and thinking it came out of left field. The Joker has featured musical numbers in a lot of Batman and Joker media, like Batman Arkham City and Arkham Knight, the animated series, the Killing Joke movie, and Christmas with Joker used to be a classic. And you can really see that the lyrics in the songs are used to kind of express what the characters don't have the words to say, and I really love that aspect of the film because, Arthur is a man who does struggle with social interaction. I'll also add that Todd Phillips just has a knack for putting music in films. I loved his inclusion with Kanye West music in the Hangover movies. He just makes scenes work to music very well, and this was something that was done really well with the score of the first Joker film. It even won an Oscar for that. And ultimately there is the metaphor that after everything, Arthur must face the music, and that's definitely what goes down at the end. Ultimately, I liked this film, but I really, really, really wanted to love this film. This was probably my most awaited film of the year, and it probably wasn't my favorite movie that I saw in theaters this year. So, that was a little stab to the heart, but ultimately, I think Todd Phillips told the story he wanted to tell, and I think, Joaquin and Lady Gaga, it seems like they feel satisfied by the story, so, ultimately, if they got to tell their story, that's great. I enjoyed watching it. I gave the first film a 9 out of 10. I do have to go down to a 7 out of 10 for Joker Folie, just because of story plot points that weren't my favorite. Wish we wouldn't have contained the film as much. I would have loved to see some classic Joker and Harley Quinn action, even if he still decided not to be Joker at the end and decided it wasn't the life for him. I wish we would have ramped it up just a little bit. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you've gone back and watched Joker 5 years later. I did that on the first film, but it is Studio Halloween Horror Month here at Studio 24. We have 3 horror short films coming out: Rehab 404, I See It in Your Eyes, and The Ties That Bind. Added to that, we have a Studio Cinema Saturday on The Exorcist that's already come out, and one coming with Rosemary's Baby. We'll have trailers coming out for the films and just spooky stuff going on all month long. So be here at Studio 24 enjoying the holiday month with us. I'll see you there. The Joker is me.